The vintage brass clock on Martha's mantel had been ticking for 47 years, but lately its steady rhythm seemed to mock her. Sitting in her favorite armchair, Martha sipped her chamomile tea and glanced at the packed suitcases by the door. She'd spent all afternoon carefully selecting her clothes for the trip from Milwaukee to San Francisco, where her son Michael was attending a prestigious architectural conference. Excitement buzzed inside her. She hadn't seen the Pacific Ocean since Robert, her late husband, had taken her to California for their 25th anniversary. The front door swung open, and Michael strode in with her grandchildren, Emma and Tyler, trailing behind. "Mom, we need to talk about the trip," he said, setting his briefcase on the counter. "I was just getting my things ready," Martha said, smoothing her cardigan. "I have that lightweight jacket you recommended for the San Francisco weather." Michael exchanged a look with Jessica, his wife, who had just entered carrying groceries. "That's the thing, Mom. Jessica and I were talking, and we think it might be better if you stay here." "I know, and I'm sorry. But you remember how tired you got at Emma's graduation, and this trip will be much more demanding. All that walking at the conference, the flights, the time change." "I'm 72, Michael, not an invalid," Martha said, her voice sharper than she intended. Jessica stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "We're just concerned about you, Martha, and honestly, we need someone to watch the kids. The conference doesn't allow children, and the childcare we arranged fell through yesterday." Tyler, age 8, looked up from his handheld game. "I don't need a babysitter. I'm not a baby." "You're not," Martha agreed, ruffling his hair absently. Michael checked his watch. "We'll only be gone for 5 days. It'll be good for you to spend time with the grandkids, without us hovering. You're always saying you don't get enough time with them." Martha felt her excitement deflate like a punctured balloon. 5 days watching the grandchildren while Michael and Jessica explored San Francisco. 5 days of mac and cheese dinners and cartoon movies instead of sourdough bread and cable cars. "Mom, you're too frail for a cross-country trip right now," Michael said, his tone softening. "The flight, the unfamiliar hotel, all that walking. I'm just thinking of what's best for you." Frail. The word stung worse than a slap. Martha had climbed 2 flights of stairs at church just yesterday to help with the rummage sale. She still drove, still volunteered, still lived independently in her own home. When had her son started seeing her as frail? "Fine," she said, her voice hollow. "When do you leave?" "First thing tomorrow morning," Jessica replied, relief evident in her voice. "Our flight is at 8. We'll drop the kids off around 6, if that's okay." Martha nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She watched as Michael and Jessica bustled around, discussing last-minute packing details, as if the matter was fully settled, as if her feelings didn't warrant further discussion. That night, long after they'd left, Martha sat staring at her packed suitcase. She'd been looking forward to this trip for months. She'd even bought a new digital camera to capture the Golden Gate Bridge at sunset. Now she would spend the week making peanut butter sandwiches with the crusts cut off for Tyler and trying to pry Emma away from her phone. With a sigh, she began unpacking her suitcase, carefully folding her favorite blouse, the blue one with tiny white flowers that Robert always said brought out her eyes. As she placed it back in her drawer, she wondered when she had become invisible. When had she transformed from Martha Richardson, woman with hopes and dreams, into just grandma, a convenient babysitter when plans fell through? She glanced at the photo of Robert on her nightstand. He'd been gone for 8 years now. "You wouldn't have let them treat me this way," she whispered to his smiling image. Robert had always been her champion, insisting she pursue her own interests, even while raising Michael. After retiring from teaching elementary school, she'd planned to see more of the world with Robert. Cancer had stolen those dreams, leaving her alone with an emptiness that her children and grandchildren only partially filled. Sleep came fitfully that night, and morning arrived too quickly. Martha put on a brave face as Michael and Jessica dropped off the children, nodding mechanically as Jessica rattled off instructions about Emma's dance practice and Tyler's allergy medication. Then they were gone in a flurry of quick hugs and rolling suitcases, leaving Martha standing in her doorway with two sleepy grandchildren and a hollow feeling in her chest. "Can I have waffles, Grandma?" Tyler asked, tugging at her sleeve. "Of course, sweetheart," Martha replied automatically, closing the door. "Let's get some breakfast." Later that morning, while the kids were occupied with television, Martha wandered into Michael's old bedroom, which now served as a guest room when they visited. She was looking for Emma's forgotten hairbrush when she noticed Michael's leather messenger bag tucked partially under the bed. He must have forgotten it in the rush. Martha pulled it out, thinking she should call him before his flight departed. As she picked up the bag, a small book fell out, a moleskin journal with a pen tucked in its binding. Martha recognized it as the journal she'd given Michael last Christmas. She hadn't realized he actually used it. "Had to tell Mom she can't come to San Francisco with us. Jessica thinks she'll slow us down, and honestly, I agree. It's exhausting having to adjust our pace for her, and I can't afford to be distracted at this conference. Some of the top firms in the country will be there, and I need to make connections." Mom takes everything so personally, though. She doesn't understand that sometimes I just need space from her constant questions and old-fashioned perspectives. I know she's lonely since Dad died, but that's not my fault. I can't be her whole world. It's easier to tell her she's too frail than admit I just don't want my colleagues meeting my elderly mother. God, that sounds terrible written out, but the truth is, I'm at a crucial point in my career, and I can't afford any liabilities. Martha's hands shook as she read the words. Liability. That's what she was to her son, not someone to be proud of, not someone to introduce to his colleagues. A liability, an embarrassment. The pain was physical, like a vice around her chest. Martha sank onto the edge of the bed, the journal page clutched in her trembling fingers. She'd raised Michael alone after Robert died, worked extra hours tutoring to put him through his first years of college until he got a scholarship. She'd attended every architecture model presentation, every graduation, cheered at every milestone. And now, she was too old-fashioned, too much of a burden to include in his life. She thought of all the times in recent years she'd been excluded from family events, the weekend trip to Chicago that she only learned about through Facebook photos, the dinner parties at Michael and Jessica's where she was invited only for early Thanksgiving or Christmas celebrations, never for the gatherings with their friends. She had attributed it to the natural distance that comes with age and adult children establishing their own lives. Now she saw the uglier truth. They were ashamed of her. Martha carefully returned the journal page to the book and placed it back in Michael's bag, her movements mechanical. A strange calm had replaced the initial shock. The kids' voices drifted from the living room, oblivious to their grandmother's discovery. That afternoon, while Emma and Tyler played in the backyard, Martha sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold. The journal's words repeated in her mind. Old-fashioned, liability, embarrassment. Each repetition stoked a small flame inside her, burning away the hurt and leaving something else in its place. Determination. Martha Richardson had spent the 8 years since Robert's death shrinking herself to fit into the space her family allowed her. She'd accepted last-minute babysitting requests, swallowed her disappointment at forgotten birthdays, smiled through Christmas gifts of slippers and bath salts, while Michael and Jessica exchanged expensive electronics. She'd convinced herself this was what grandmothers did. They faded gracefully into the background, grateful for whatever scraps of attention came their way. But she wasn't dead yet. At 72, she was still healthy, still sharp, still capable of more than making chicken nuggets and enforcing bedtimes. Robert wouldn't have accepted such treatment. And suddenly, Martha couldn't either. As the kids raced through the sprinkler outside, Martha did something she'd never done before. She opened her laptop and navigated to her bank account. After Robert's death, she'd been careful with the life insurance money, investing most of it and living frugally on her teacher's pension. Her financial advisor always praised her restraint. "Most widows your age would have spent it all by now," he'd said, not realizing how condescending the observation was. The numbers on the screen confirmed what she already knew. She had enough. More than enough for what she was contemplating. Martha picked up her phone and called her neighbor Eleanor Simmons. "Eleanor? It's Martha. I have an unusual favor to ask. 2 hours later, Eleanor arrived at Martha's door, suitcase in hand and a mischievous sparkle in her eye. Are you sure about this? Eleanor asked, setting down her bag. At 68, Eleanor was a widow like Martha, but unlike Martha, she'd refused to settle into quiet grandmotherhood. She traveled twice yearly, dated occasionally, and had recently taken up pickleball with a vengeance. I've never been more sure of anything, Martha replied, handing Eleanor a list of emergency contacts and the children's schedules. They're good kids. Emma's 13 going on 30, and Tyler's 8. They both know you. It's not the kids I'm worried about, Eleanor said, studying Martha's face. It's you. This isn't like you, Martha. Maybe that's the problem, Martha said quietly. Maybe I've been too predictable, too accommodating. Maybe it's time I surprised everyone, including myself. Eleanor's expression softened. Well, I think it's about damn time. Go pack. I'll get acquainted with the troops. That evening, after the children were settled with Eleanor, Emma sulking but accepting of the arrangement, Tyler excited about Eleanor's promise to teach him card tricks. Martha wheeled her suitcase to her car, the same suitcase she'd packed and unpacked just yesterday, now refilled with purpose. She hadn't told Michael or Jessica of her plans. Let them discover her absence when they called to check in. Let them experience a fraction of the dismissal she'd felt. Martha wasn't normally vindictive, but the words from Michael's journal had awakened something dormant inside her. If she was too frail to accompany them to San Francisco, then she was certainly too frail to watch active grandchildren for 5 days. As she backed out of her driveway, Martha felt a moment of panic. Was she being reckless? Selfish? She'd never done anything like this before. Then she remembered Michael's words. Liability, old-fashioned. The panic hardened into resolve. She was going to San Francisco, not to follow Michael around his conference, but to prove to herself that she was still capable of adventure, still alive. Martha merged onto the highway, heading for Milwaukee Mitchell International Airport. She had a ticket on the first morning flight to San Francisco, booked and paid for while the children napped. She'd even splurged on a first-class seat, something she'd never done before. As the city lights faded behind her, Martha felt a curious lightness. For the first time since Robert died, she was doing something completely unexpected, something just for herself. Whatever happened in San Francisco, she wouldn't be invisible anymore. The first-class cabin smelled of coffee and expensive perfume. Martha settled into her wide seat, still hardly believing her own boldness. The flight attendant, a man with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, offered her champagne. It's 6 in the morning, Martha protested with a small laugh. It's never too early for a little celebration, he replied with a wink. First time in first class? Martha nodded, accepting the flute. First time doing a lot of things. Well, here's to new experiences, he said, moving on to the next passenger. Martha sipped the champagne, feeling the bubbles tickle her nose. Robert would have approved. He'd always encouraged her spontaneous side, the part of her that had gradually disappeared under the weight of widowhood and the role of the accommodating mother and grandmother. As the plane ascended through the clouds, Martha gazed out the window. Below, Wisconsin was disappearing. Along with the predictable life she'd constructed, ahead lay California, uncertainty, and the chance to rediscover the woman she'd been before life had narrowed her existence to babysitting and bridge club. The flight passed in a blur of small luxuries, warm towels, a breakfast that didn't come in a plastic wrapper, attentive service that made Martha feel visible in a way she hadn't in years. When they landed in San Francisco, she felt ready for whatever came next. She'd booked a room at a boutique hotel in Union Square, far enough from Michael's conference hotel to avoid accidental encounters, but close enough to the city's attractions. A taxi dropped her at the hotel's entrance, where a doorman immediately took her suitcase. First time in San Francisco, ma'am? He asked as he escorted her to the reception desk. First time in many years, Martha replied. And please call me Martha. Her room was small but elegant, with a bay window overlooking the bustling square below. Martha unpacked methodically, hanging her clothes in the closet with care. Then she stood at the window, watching the city pulse with life. Somewhere out there, Michael was attending his conference, unaware that his mother was in the same city, having defied his assessment of her capabilities. Martha felt a momentary twinge of guilt about the children, but she knew they were safe with Eleanor. She'd call them tonight, as promised. This wasn't about punishing the kids. It was about reclaiming herself. She changed into comfortable walking shoes and a light jacket, tucked her map and guidebook into her purse, and headed out to explore. The city was just as vibrant as she remembered from that long-ago anniversary trip, but now she saw it through different eyes, not as part of a couple but as a woman standing on her own. Martha spent the afternoon wandering through Union Square, admiring window displays and people watching. She ate lunch at a small cafe, ordering a glass of white wine without hesitation. When the server suggested it would pair well with her seafood salad, the old Martha would have demurred, saying it was too early or too extravagant. The new Martha savored each sip. As the afternoon waned, Martha found herself drawn toward the waterfront. The Embarcadero stretched before her, lined with piers and bustling with activity. She walked slowly, drinking in the salt air and the sounds of the bay. At Pier 39, Martha paused to watch the sea lions lounging on their floating docks, barking and jostling for position. Tourists crowded around, snapping photos, but Martha simply stood and observed, feeling a connection to these creatures who seemed so content in their sun-soaked existence. "They're something, aren't they?" a voice beside her said. Martha turned to find a woman about her age, perhaps a few years younger, with silver-streaked black hair cut in a stylish bob. She wore a colorful scarf and carried a professional-looking camera. "They certainly know how to enjoy life," Martha replied. The woman smiled. "I'm Diana. I come here at least once a week to photograph them. They're never the same twice." "Martha," she offered in return, "I'm visiting. It's been years since I've seen them." "Visiting family?" Diana asked, adjusting her camera. Martha hesitated. "No," she said finally. "Just visiting for myself." Diana nodded approvingly. "The best kind of trip. Are you staying long?" "5 days," Martha said. "I'm not sure what I'll do with all of them yet." "Well, if you'd like some company tomorrow, a group of us are taking the ferry to Sausalito. Nothing formal, just a few friends who enjoy photography and good food. You'd be welcome to join." Martha's first instinct was to politely decline. She didn't know this woman. She wasn't the type to join groups of strangers. But then she thought of Michael's words. Old-fashioned, liability, and something shifted inside her. "I'd like that," she said, surprising herself. "What time?" They exchanged information, and after Diana left to catch the changing light for her photographs, Martha remained, watching the sea lions bask in the late afternoon sun. She felt a kinship with them, these creatures who claimed their space so unapologetically, who sunned themselves without concern for how they appeared to others. That evening, Martha called her grandchildren as promised. Emma was sullen, Tyler enthusiastic about the card tricks Eleanor had taught him. Neither asked where she was, and Martha didn't volunteer the information. After the call, she ordered room service, another first, and ate dinner by her window, watching the city lights come alive. Her phone chimed with a text from Michael. "Kids say you're not there. What's going on? Where are you?" Martha considered not answering, but that felt too petty. Instead, she wrote back, "The children are with Eleanor. I had an opportunity arise suddenly. They're in good hands." Immediately her phone rang, Michael's name flashing on the screen. Martha let it go to voicemail. She wasn't ready for that conversation, for the concern that would morph into control, for the subtle ways he would make her feel that she'd done something wrong by choosing herself for once. Tomorrow would be soon enough to deal with Michael's reaction. Tonight was still hers. Martha slept deeply that night, lulled by the distant sounds of the city and the sense of having broken free from invisible constraints. When she woke, her phone showed 5 missed calls from Michael and 3 from Jessica. There were also several texts, ranging from concerned to increasingly angry. "Mom, this is completely irresponsible. Call me immediately. The kids are upset. What were you thinking? If we don't hear from you in the next hour, we're calling the police. That last one made Martha sigh. She texted back, "No need for police. I'm perfectly fine. Enjoying some time to myself since I was too frail for your trip. The children are safe with Eleanor, whom they know well. Enjoy your conference." She put the phone on silent and got ready for her day with Diana and her friends. Let Michael stew in his own reactions for a while. She'd spent too many years prioritizing his feelings over her own. The ferry to Sausalito was crowded with tourists, but Diana had saved her a spot by the railing. She introduced Martha to her friends, two other women and a man, all in their 60s or 70s, all with an energy and curiosity that Martha found infectious. "So Martha's visiting from Wisconsin," Diana explained as the ferry pulled away from the dock, the wind whipping at their hair. "First time in San Francisco in years." "And you're traveling alone?" asked Patricia, a tall woman with elegant silver hair and statement earrings. "Good for you. Too many women our age are afraid to do that." "It was a last-minute decision," Martha admitted. "I wasn't planning to come at all." "Those are the best trips," said George, the only man in the group. His weathered face crinkled with his smile. "The ones you don't overthink." As the ferry cut through the bay, Martha felt herself relaxing into the conversation. These strangers asked about her life with genuine interest, but without the constant undercurrent of concern that colored her interactions with Michael and Jessica. They didn't treat her as fragile or limited by her age. If anything, they seemed to take for granted that she was capable and independent. In Sausalito, they wandered through art galleries and shops, stopped for coffee at a waterfront cafe, and took countless photographs of the stunning views back toward San Francisco. Martha hadn't brought a proper camera, but Diana insisted on taking several pictures of her against the backdrop of the bay, the city skyline shimmering in the distance. "I'll email these to you," Diana promised. "Everyone should have evidence of their adventures." By late afternoon, when they returned to the city, Martha felt as though she'd known these people for years rather than hours. They parted with plans to meet again the next day for a visit to Golden Gate Park. Back at her hotel, Martha finally checked her phone. More missed calls, more increasingly frantic texts, and a voicemail from Jessica that made her pause. "Martha, I don't know what's going on, but Michael is beside himself. He's thinking of cutting the conference short to fly home and check on the kids. Please, if you get this, just let us know where you are and that you're okay. This isn't like you." That last sentence hung in the air. This isn't like you. But who was she, really? The compliant mother-in-law who never made waves? The grandmother who was only valued for her babysitting services? Or was she something more, something she'd lost sight of over the years? Martha took a deep breath and called Jessica. "Martha, thank God," Jessica answered immediately. "Where are you? Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Jessica," Martha said calmly. "I'm in San Francisco." "But how? When?" Jessica sputtered. "I flew out yesterday morning. First class, actually. It was lovely." Another silence. Martha could almost see Jessica struggling to process this information, to reconcile it with her image of her predictable mother-in-law. "I texted him this morning. I imagine he's not pleased." "That's an understatement," Jessica said, her voice tight. "He's worried sick. We both are. The kids are perfectly fine with Eleanor," Martha interrupted gently. "I spoke with them last night, and I'll call again tonight. Eleanor is more than capable of caring for them." "But why didn't you tell us? Why the secrecy?" Martha considered her words carefully. "I needed to do this for myself, Jessica, and I think part of me knew you and Michael would try to talk me out of it." "Of course we would have. Flying across the country alone at your age without telling anyone. It's dangerous, Martha." "Is it?" Martha asked mildly. "I managed just fine. Today I took a ferry to Sausalito with some new friends. Tomorrow we're going to Golden Gate Park." "New friends?" "Martha, you don't know these people." "I'm getting to know them," Martha corrected. "And they're treating me like a capable adult, not a fragile old woman who needs protection from herself." Jessica was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Michael wants to talk to you. I'm sure he does, Martha said, and I'll talk to him, but not tonight. Tonight I'm going to have dinner and then call the children. Please tell Michael that everyone is safe, and there's no need to cut his conference short. We can all talk when you get home. After ending the call, Martha sat on the edge of her bed, her heart racing despite her calm exterior during the conversation. She'd never spoken to Jessica that way before, not unkindly, but firmly, without the usual deference to her daughter-in-law's opinions. It felt good, terrifying, but good. That night, after a delightful dinner with Diana and her friends, Martha called the children again. Emma was more animated this time, sharing stories about Eleanor teaching her to make crepes. Grandma, where are you really? Emma asked suddenly. Mom and Dad were freaking out earlier. Martha hesitated, then decided on honesty. I'm in San Francisco, sweetheart. No way, Emma exclaimed. You mean like where Mom and Dad are? The very same city, yes. But they said you couldn't go, that you weren't, strong enough or whatever. Well, I decided to find out for myself, Martha said. And it turns out I'm doing just fine. Emma was quiet for a moment. That's actually pretty cool, Grandma, she said finally, a new note of respect in her voice. Dad's super mad, though. Your father will get over it, Martha said with more confidence than she felt. Now let me talk to your brother. The next day brought more adventures with Diana and her friends, a leisurely exploration of Golden Gate Park, including the Japanese tea garden and the De Young Museum. Martha found herself laughing more than she had in years, taking joy in simple pleasures like the pattern of light filtering through trees and the taste of jasmine tea served in delicate cups. She'd turned her phone to silent again, unwilling to let Michael's inevitable anger intrude on her day. She would deal with him soon enough, but for now, she wanted to savor this newfound freedom. That evening, as they sat in a small restaurant in North Beach, enjoying pasta and wine, George raised his glass. To Martha, he said, who reminds us it's never too late to surprise yourself. The others joined the toast, and Martha felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine. These people had no history with her, no preconceived notions of who she was or what she was capable of. They simply accepted her as she presented herself now, an adventurous woman enjoying life. After dinner, as they walked back toward Union Square, Diana linked her arm through Martha's. You know, she said, there's a dance class at the community center tomorrow morning. Nothing fancy, just a bunch of seniors like us shaking off the rust. You should come. Martha thought of her arthritic knee, the one she used as an excuse to decline her neighbor's invitations to water aerobics. I'm not much of a dancer, she demurred. Neither am I. Diana laughed. That's what makes it fun. No one expects perfection at our age. No one expects perfection. The words echoed in Martha's mind. How many opportunities had she declined because she feared not meeting some imagined standard? How often had she stayed in her comfort zone because she was afraid of appearing foolish or inadequate? What time? Martha asked, making another small decision to expand rather than contract her life. That night, Martha finally listened to Michael's voicemails. His initial concern had indeed morphed into anger, then a cold sort of disappointment that was painfully familiar. It was the tone he'd used when she'd forgotten to mail his graduate school application on time 20 years ago, and when she'd accidentally mentioned his fear of heights at a family gathering last Christmas. I don't know what kind of point you're trying to make, Mom, his latest message said, but this is childish and irresponsible. We'll talk when I get home. Martha deleted the messages without responding. She wasn't making a point, she was making a change. And if Michael couldn't see the difference, that was his limitation, not hers. The dance class the next morning was held in a bright, airy room at a community center near Chinatown. About 20 people, mostly women, but a few men as well, moved to upbeat music under the guidance of an energetic instructor in her 50s. Martha felt stiff at first, self-conscious about her movements, but as the class progressed, something loosened inside her. She found herself swaying more freely, raising her arms with less hesitation, even laughing when she missed a step. No one judged. If anything, the other participants seemed to delight in each other's enthusiasm rather than technical skill. By the end of the hour, Martha was glowing with exertion and pleasure. Her knee ached a bit, but it was a satisfying kind of ache, the kind that reminded her she was alive and moving. "What did you think?" Diana asked, as they gathered their belongings afterward. "I loved it," Martha admitted. "I can't remember the last time I really danced." "Well, you're a natural," Diana said. "You should join us again next time you're in town." Next time. The idea that this didn't have to be a one-time rebellion, that she could build a life that included regular adventures and new friends, settled into Martha's consciousness like a seed taking root. They were walking to a nearby dim sum restaurant for lunch when Martha's phone rang. Michael again. This time, she answered. "Mom," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" "Having a wonderful time in San Francisco," Martha replied calmly. "I just took a dance class, and now I'm going for dim sum with friends." "Friends? What friends?" "Mom, this isn't like you at all. Jessica told me you flew first class? That's so wasteful. And leaving the kids with Eleanor without telling us?" "Michael," Martha interrupted. "The children are fine. I check in with them daily. Eleanor is a responsible adult who has raised 3 children of her own. And yes, I flew first class with my own money, which is mine to spend as I choose." "But why?" Michael demanded. "Why would you do this? If you wanted to come to San Francisco so badly, you could have just said so." "I did say so," Martha pointed out. "For months, you decided I was too frail to handle the trip. Because I was concerned about you. You get tired so easily these days." "No, Michael," Martha said quietly but firmly. "You weren't concerned. You were embarrassed." Silence fell on the other end of the line. "What are you talking about?" Michael finally asked, his voice strained. "I found your journal," Martha said. "You left it at home. I read what you wrote about not wanting your colleagues to meet your elderly mother, about me being a liability to your networking." Another long silence. When Michael spoke again, his voice was subdued. "You read my private journal?" "I did," Martha acknowledged. "I'm not proud of that. But I'm also not sorry I learned the truth." "Yes, you did," Martha said gently. "And that's why I'm here, Michael. Not to spite you, but to remind myself that I'm more than how you see me. I'm not just an old woman who might embarrass you or slow you down. I'm still Martha Richardson, and I still have my own life to live." Diana was waiting patiently a few steps away, giving Martha privacy for her conversation. Martha gave her a grateful smile. "We'll talk more when you get home," Martha said to Michael. "Enjoy the rest of your conference. I'll see you in a few days." She ended the call before he could respond, feeling lighter than she had in years. She hadn't raised her voice or said anything cruel, but for perhaps the first time since Robert died, she had stood her ground with her son. She had spoken her truth without cushioning it to protect his feelings. "Everything okay?" Diana asked as Martha rejoined her. "Getting there," Martha replied with a small smile. "Getting there." The remaining days in San Francisco passed in a blur of new experiences. Martha visited Alcatraz with George and Patricia, explored Chinatown with Diana, and even ventured across the Golden Gate Bridge to Muir Woods, where the ancient redwoods made her feel simultaneously insignificant and connected to something eternal. She spoke with Emma and Tyler each evening, their initial confusion about her absence giving way to curiosity about her adventures. Emma, especially, seemed fascinated by the idea that her grandmother had taken off on her own. "Did you always want to travel, Grandma?" she asked during one call. "Always," Martha admitted. "Your grandfather and I had big plans for when we retired. We were going to see the world. But then he died," Emma said with the blunt honesty of adolescence. "Yes. And somehow, I forgot that I could still have adventures on my own." "I think it's cool that you remembered," Emma said. "Maybe next time I could come with you?" The suggestion caught Martha by surprise. "I'd like that," she said softly. "Very much." On her last day in San Francisco, Martha met Diana for coffee near Union Square. They developed a quick but genuine friendship, the kind that sometimes happens between like-minded souls who meet at the right moment. So, back to Wisconsin tomorrow, Diana said, stirring her latte. Back to real life. Yes, but not back to the same life, Martha replied. This week has changed things for me. I can't go back to being invisible. Diana nodded. You know, I was like you once. After Dave died, I just shrank, became the quiet widow, the obliging mother who never made demands. It took me years to realize that I was disappearing, piece by piece. I got angry, Diana said simply. One Thanksgiving, my son and his wife relegated me to the kids' table because there wasn't enough room at the main table. I sat there with my 7-year-old grandson, eating turkey off a paper plate, watching them laugh with their friends at the grown-up table, and something inside me just snapped. What did you do? I stood up, thanked them for dinner, went home, and booked a cruise for Christmas. Spent the holiday in the Caribbean, instead of watching my family open the presents I'd carefully chosen while they gave me another robe and slippers. Martha laughed. Good for you. It wasn't easy, Diana admitted. There were tears and accusations, but eventually they adjusted to the new me, and our relationship is actually better now, more honest, more equal. They don't take me for granted anymore. Then he'll have a choice to make, Diana said. Accept the mother he actually has, or cling to the convenient image he's created. Before they parted, they exchanged contact information and promises to stay in touch. Diana hugged Martha tightly. Remember, she whispered, the hardest part isn't the adventure itself, it's maintaining your independence when you go back home, when everyone expects you back to slide into the box they've built for you. Stay strong, Martha. Stay true to what you've discovered about yourself. That night, as Martha packed her suitcase for the journey home, she reflected on Diana's words. The box they'd built for her had been comfortable in its way, predictable, safe, requiring little from her besides compliance. Stepping out of it had been terrifying, exhilarating, and ultimately transformative. She wondered what would await her at home. Michael's anger? Jessica's bewilderment? Or perhaps, if she was lucky, a new understanding. Either way, she couldn't go back to being the obliging grandmother whose only value lay in her availability and accommodation. The flight home was uneventful, though Martha found herself missing the small luxuries of first class. She'd splurged on the outbound journey as an act of rebellion. The return flight was economy, a practical choice that still felt like her own decision rather than a concession. Eleanor picked her up at the Milwaukee airport, her eyes dancing with amusement. Well, look at you, she said as Martha approached. California agrees with you. It wasn't California, Martha replied, sliding into the passenger seat. It was freedom. On the drive home, Martha shared stories of her adventures. The ferry to Sausalito, the dance class, the majestic redwoods. Eleanor listened with genuine interest, occasionally shooting Martha glances of surprised admiration. The kids were fine, by the way, Eleanor said, as they neared Martha's neighborhood. Though Michael called about 10 times a day, Jessica was a bit calmer. They're back now. At your house, with the children. I told them what time your flight was landing. Martha nodded, steeling herself for the confrontation to come. Thank you, Eleanor. For everything. Don't thank me yet, Eleanor said with a wry smile. You still have to face the music. Though between us, I think what you did was long overdue. Michael's car was indeed in Martha's driveway. As Eleanor pulled up behind it, Martha took a deep breath. Wish me luck. You don't need luck, Eleanor said. You need backbone. And from what I've seen, you've found plenty of that in San Francisco. Martha squared her shoulders and walked to her front door, rolling her suitcase behind her. Before she could even reach for her keys, the door swung open, revealing Michael, his face a storm of emotions. Mom, he said stiffly, stepping aside to let her enter. Inside, Jessica sat on the couch, the children beside her. Emma jumped up when she saw Martha. Grandma, she exclaimed, rushing forward for a hug. Did you bring me something from San Francisco? Martha laughed, embracing her granddaughter. As a matter of fact, I did. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small package, wrapped in tissue paper. For you? And something for Tyler, too. Tyler approached more cautiously. Eyeing his father's tense posture, Martha handed him a small box containing a model cable car. His face lit up. Cool. Thanks, Grandma. Emma. Tyler. Why don't you take those to the kitchen table and look at them while we talk to Grandma? Jessica suggested, her voice carefully neutral. Martha set her purse down and met her son's gaze steadily. I left the children with a responsible adult. I checked in with them daily. I answered your calls when I was ready to talk. There was nothing irresponsible about my actions, Michael. You disappeared without telling us where you were going, just as you were planning to disappear to San Francisco without me, Martha pointed out calmly. Michael's face flushed. That was different. We told you our plans. Yes, after you'd made them without consulting me. After you'd decided I was too frail to include. Jessica cleared her throat. Martha, we were just concerned about your comfort. The long flight, the walking. No, Martha said gently but firmly. That wasn't it, Jessica, and we all know it now. Michael looked away, unable to meet his mother's eyes. You read my journal, he muttered. Those were private thoughts. Yes, they were, Martha agreed. And I shouldn't have read them. But I did, and I can't unread them. I know how you really see me, as a liability, an embarrassment, someone who doesn't fit into your professional image. Jessica looked between them, confusion evident on her face. What journal? What is she talking about? Michael shook his head dismissively. Just some notes I jotted down. Mom's blowing it out of proportion. Am I? Martha asked quietly. She turned to Jessica. Michael wrote that he didn't want his colleagues meeting his elderly mother, that I'm old-fashioned and a liability. That's why he told me I was too frail for the trip, because he was ashamed to include me. Jessica's eyes widened. She turned to Michael. Is that true? Michael's silence was answer enough. Oh, Michael, Jessica sighed, disappointment evident in her voice. Martha moved to sit in her favorite armchair, suddenly feeling the fatigue of the journey. I'm not angry anymore, she said, surprising herself with the truth of it. I was hurt when I read those words, deeply hurt. But this trip has reminded me that I'm more than just your mother, Michael. More than just Emma and Tyler's grandmother. I'm still Martha Richardson. I still have my own life to live. Michael remained silent, his expression unreadable. I met wonderful people in San Francisco, Martha continued. People who saw me as a whole person, not as a fragile old woman or a convenient babysitter. We explored the city together. I went dancing. I took a ferry to Sausalito. I did all the things you thought I was too frail to handle, and I did them with joy. Jessica moved to sit on the arm of the couch, closer to Martha. It sounds wonderful, she said softly. I'm glad you had that experience. Michael shot his wife a betrayed look. Don't misunderstand me, Martha said, leaning forward. I love being your mother, Michael. I love being a grandmother to Emma and Tyler. But that can't be all I am. Not anymore. So, what are you saying? Michael asked, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. You're going to just take off whenever you feel like it now? I'm saying that I'm going to start living my life for me again, not just for all of you. I'll still be here when you need me, when you truly need me, not just when it's convenient to have a free babysitter, but I'm also going to travel, make friends, take dance classes, do all the things that make me feel alive. A small noise from the doorway made them all turn. Emma stood there, listening. I think that sounds awesome, Grandma, she said. Maybe you could teach me to dance sometime. Martha smiled at her granddaughter. I'd love that, sweetheart. Michael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of Robert that Martha's heart ached momentarily. I don't know what to say, Mom. I feel like you've ambushed us with this new person you suddenly want to be. Not new, Martha corrected gently. Just forgotten for a while. And I'm not asking for your permission, Michael. I'm just hoping for your understanding. Your support would be nice too, but I'll manage without it if necessary. Jessica stood and moved to her husband's side, placing a hand on his arm. Michael, she said softly, your mother deserves to be happy, to live her life fully, just as we're living ours. Michael looked at his wife, then at his mother, and finally at Emma, still standing in the doorway. Something in his expression shifted, a subtle softening around the eyes. "I didn't mean what I wrote," he said finally. "Not really. I was stressed about the conference, and I—" "You meant it," Martha interrupted, not unkindly. "But that's okay. We all have thoughts we're not proud of. The question is what we do with them, how we move forward." After a moment, Michael nodded. "I'm sorry, Mom, for what I wrote, for excluding you, for not seeing you clearly." "Thank you," Martha said simply. Later, after Michael, Jessica, and the children had gone home, with promises to have dinner together later in the week, Martha sat on her porch with a cup of tea, watching the evening settle over her garden. The hydrangeas needed deadheading, and the bird feeder was empty. Tomorrow she would tend to those things, slip back into the rhythms of her everyday life. But it wouldn't be the same life. Already her mind was turning to possibilities. Perhaps she would finally take Eleanor up on her invitation to join the water aerobics class at the community center. Maybe she would look into that Mediterranean cruise she and Robert had once dreamed of taking. Diana had already emailed the photos from their adventures, along with a link to a virtual dance class they could do together despite the distance. The world felt wider now, full of doors she had forgotten existed, let alone that she might open them. She had stepped out of the box built for her, and though there would surely be challenges ahead, Michael's lingering resentment, her own moments of doubt, she couldn't imagine crawling back inside. Martha sipped her tea and watched a hummingbird dart among her flowers, its wings a blur of motion and purpose. She thought of something Diana had said on their last day together. The thing about invisible boxes is that once you see them, you can never unsee them, and once you step outside, you realize how small they really were. The box Michael had built for her, the one she had helped construct with her own acquiescence, had been small indeed. Too small for a woman who could dance in San Francisco, make friends with strangers, and find her voice again after years of careful silence. Martha Richardson wasn't frail. She wasn't a liability. She was alive, with years ahead of her and choices to make. And for the first time since Robert died, those choices felt entirely her own. As the evening deepened into night, Martha took out her phone and sent a text to Diana. "Made it home. Faced the music. Planning my next adventure already." The reply came almost immediately. "That's my girl. The world is waiting." Martha smiled and turned her gaze to the stars emerging above her garden. Yes, the world was waiting. And this time, she wouldn't keep it waiting too long.